So it was in 2015. I was 25 years old. We got together in my studio apartment with my associate. It was all bootstrapped. We wanted to do software and services at the same time. Along the way, we found out that really wouldn't work. But when we started, we said we wanted to build a company. We wanted to make it grow, and I wanted to sell the company. By the time I got to 30 years old, I obviously failed doing that.
So welcome to another show of the Europreneur Podcast, the EO Podcast in Europe, aimed at giving you a glimpse to some of the best entrepreneurs we can find in the organization. And today I have a guest, Alan from Madrid, originally from Buenos Aires, and we'll discuss about that. Also, would you like to give a little glimpse about who you are before we start?
As you want. So my name is Alan. I'm 33 years old, if you are watching this on 2022. And I've been part of the Buenos Aires chapter. I'm originally from Argentina. I dedicated my 20s mostly to digital marketing and data. I started in the digital marketing world by trying to be a Google expert, just a kind of a premium freelancer. And I realized there were too many digital marketing agencies around trying to do the same and not really trying to give clients enough data or transparency for them to really know how campaigns were doing and everything, because it wasn't good for the most of agencies for the clients to know that. So I decided to build a data company in which we didn't really run ads, but we only cared about providing large companies with enough data for them to understand users' traffic, both on mobile and web or any digital asset that they may have. That scaled.
At what age did you start your agency?
I started that in 2015. It wasn't really an agency, it was a consultancy company. So it was in 2015. I was 25 years old. We got together in my studio apartment with my associate. It was all bootstrapped. We wanted to do software and services at the same time. Along the way, we found out that really wouldn't work. But when we started, we said we wanted to build a company. We wanted to make it grow, and I wanted to sell the company. By the time I got to 30 years old, I obviously failed doing that.
Why did you want to start? What did you study? What makes you suddenly sit on the couch with your friend and say, let's start a company, let's do SEO, let's do Google? Why? What makes someone in Argentina, why not go work in a company?
That was never a possibility. I don't know how back I should go to answer that question, but I grew up seeing my dad working for a large company. It was on the chocolate and candy side. He used to work for a large distributor of that, and he used to work 12, 15, 16 hours a day, and he never had time for anything else. When I was 16 or 17, he started trying to move away from that world and starting building his own business. So he used to have his own businesses before I was born, but since I was born, he needed some stability. So he wanted to leave the corporate job and build some, I never know how to say this in English. It's kind of a grocery store, but a small one that you can find in some corners or some places. They sell you candy, they sell you cigarettes. Maybe convenience stores will be a nice translation, but it's not exactly what they have in Buenos Aires.
We call them kiosks in Israel.
Okay, yeah. We call them kioscos in Argentina. So he his first kiosk, his second kiosk, and then a large chocolate store. And with that, he was able to leave his business, and his life improved like 1,000%. He started winning more money, having some time and everything. Of course, it wasn't perfect, but it had a lot of benefits. So I saw him doing all that transition, and I always ask a lot of questions about how to manage stuff. So since I was young, I never really worked for somebody. My only job was being a waiter for 2 months in Puerto Madero, which is the nicest place for tourists here, in which you can have the best meat in the world. But since then, I always like sold stuff on my own. The first time I started selling stuff, I was 13. I was 7. I was 7. I started selling some toys to my to people in my school, because my dad used to get cheap stuff because he worked in a distributor. So I always sold stuff on my own, and I always won more money than my friends. Of course, I wasn't millionaire, but I know I was 19 and I worked 3 or 4 hours a day just distributing stuff to different kiosks, and I won more money than my friends. So I was like, this is stupid. Why should I work for a company? It doesn't make any sense. So by the time I got into the digital marketing world, I started freelancing. I started getting to know people at Google, and I started doing some webinars for them. And I used to sell my time as a consultant and manage some accounts on my own. And really, I didn't want to work a lot. I worked 3 or 4 hours a day. And the people at Google were like, you should work at Google. I was like, you win less money than me, and I only work 3 hours a day, so why should I?
I wanted to ask, you're working, would you recommend young people to start freelancing as kind of like a way to learn how to do better marketing or better SEO stuff? Or if the chance occurs to go work in Google for 1 or 2 years and learn there?
It depends on who you are, what your needs are, and what you like. In my case, I never liked university. I get bored easily. It's not a good thing. It's not like I'm too smart, I get bored. It's just I can't really pay attention for 4 hours. I get distracted at 20 minutes. And I really like Googling stuff, and you learn more by Googling and listening to free webinars and everything. If you are in the digital world, than if you try to learn something in the university, simply because the teachers won't be the best in the world. The best in the world don't have time to be full-time teachers in universities in the digital world. So you will get to learn more in your own, but you have to have discipline and curiosity and a lot of stuff that a lot of people doesn't have. This applies to digital. Of course, if you want to be a paramedic, you have to go to university. I wouldn't recommend it, learning it by tutorials. But in the case of digital, if you have enough discipline, and mostly if you like learning new stuff, because most stuff I learned by curiosity, not trying to do money. And then I realized a lot of people were willing to pay money for that. So if you can organically learn a lot of stuff online, I think it's way better, and you will win more unique wisdom, which is the one that has more value in the market. Not the career one.
I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying in terms of you can learn a lot of things alone and go try. And yes, it also has something to do with your skill set, and it also has to do with your mindset. If you're more of a learner that enjoys the college. By the way, college universities I loved mainly because not so much the learning, but more the people I met along the way, and the networking and the fun aspect, which is important. But when I started, I also have a marketing agency. We also started kind of like one by one, consulting, and then it kind of grew. What I wanted to ask is, when you and your friend are sitting on that couch in Buenos Aires saying, let's start something, was the goal to scale it or have fun with it or see what happens?
The goal was to sell it. We were like, when I started the company, I was more into politics. I have dedicated, most of my teenage years and my young years to trying to change the world from politics from here. So I wasn't really interested in building a company or making money. I was kind of good at it. I was always kind of, because that's something I learned from my house. I had some facility, but that wasn't my target. But when I got to 25 and I saw the opportunity, I was like, fuck it, let's get out of politics for a little bit. Let's just dedicate to capitalism 100% for a few years and try to make it so I have enough money to not care about money and going back to how to have a positive impact in the world. So I was like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my life from 25 to 30 to try to do that. That was the main goal. And then we put a number. We said, okay, let's build a company and scale it. And when somebody offers us this amount of money, let's not get tempted for getting more and more and more, because there's always risk. Let's just sell it and go back to our usual life. Of course, we were just dreaming. We didn't have any real knowledge or anything about it, where we will be able to make it. That was our main goal. Of course, we didn't want to make it anyhow, we wanted to make a company in which everybody was legally contracted and formally contracted and was paid well and got to learn stuff in the place and got to grow as a person. We wanted to build value to companies. We wanted to be transparent and not be as dishonest as most agencies are in Latin America. We didn't want to make it at all costs, but the main goal was to be able to sell it and to build money. We don't buy that kind of discourse, we are creating value to our clients. Of course we are, but that's not the main goal. That's not what I like to do. And I know a lot of people in digital marketing say, okay, this is my passion. It wasn't my passion. It was something that I was good at and it was useful for my goals in my cases. It's less catchy, as a slogan or as a way to build companies.
How important is it to have I love what you're saying. You're talking about when people say, if the money's the goal, it doesn't matter, it will never succeed or so on. But if you find something you're good at that has a means to an end, that's also a very good reason. So the money is one part, but a means to an end to do something else, and especially if you're good at. And I think most people would come and say, you have to do your passion, you have to have your hobby as your work so it doesn't feel like a work. By the way, I think if you do something you love for long enough as your job, it becomes a job. And then you need to find a new hobby. But the means to an end is a very interesting way to look at it. You were talking about transparency and other stuff like that. Is that the big thing? Like, is that something that was missing in the market that you were bringing in?
Yes, it was really missing here. And for me, it was obvious it was going to grow. Of course, I didn't really know. Of course, I wasn't involved in the large company world and everything. I had just some hints and trying to follow it. And some of the main ideas we started with, we discarded them. But the main thesis stayed, which is like, digital is only going to grow. Digital marketing agencies are just marketing agencies who became digital, so they don't really know about numbers, they don't really know about programming, they don't really know about that, and they won't be able to build a good data team. Even if they get the professional knowledge that nobody had in Latin America, they won't be able to do it because it's not something good for their business. They are going to lose money if client finds out how awful their campaigns are if they gave them. So they're always going to be skewed. So we wanted to be neutral. The only way to be neutral is to build a company who only gives you data and doesn't run any campaign. We don't have any money. We are able to tell the client, okay, you should stop all your campaigns tomorrow. We want to get bankruptcy as a company because we sell man hours, we sell licenses, we sell our stuff. So we had to be independent. That was the main thesis.
So today you don't do any campaigns, only data?
I sold the company in 2020 to a media company, of course. So the market started changing and it looks like everything gets... there's some trend. I know if you saw the same, but in market, when you have something new, you have expansion. You have a lot of micro companies who start doing really well by doing something really specialized. In digital marketing, you have SEO companies, SEM companies, social media companies, video editing companies, influencer companies, and everything starts to flourish. But once the market starts to get consolidated, then the best solution is not for a client to have 20 different providers, but to have one who really does it all well. So mergers start to happen, and everything starts consolidating again. And when the contraction is over, then it expands again, and it's a process that I know it's never ending. So at one point, we also aimed to be a data company only based in Latin America, so we could be acquired by a large media agency, one that we think does things the right way and not the corrupt, inefficient usual of the very large agency holdings. So by the end, we ended up being acquired by one company who we really shared the culture and the way they did stuff and can be transparent at the same time that runs media, which is something really, really difficult to do. You have to be really sure about that you're doing the right thing, and you will sacrifice some money on the table. But in the long term, I think it's the right way for operating the market.
So 2 questions about selling a company. I think one in Israel, or I think in many places, when you sell a company, you have to stay on board for a certain time, certain period to kind of like see it through. So I think my question, first of all, is if you did that or not. And secondly, how fast was the sale?
Well, I can start with the second question, and then go to the other one, so I can go in order. So it depends on when you start to measure. So we always wanted to sell the company. It has been a few years when we sold it, since we started talking to some agencies that were interested, but they were always like, okay, we really like you. It's not the best time. Let's do a pilot. Okay, let's keep talking. And it was kind of, I don't know, we've been only around for 3 or 4 years, but at what point we really were like, okay, are we going to get acquired ever? Because the companies that we really would like to be interested, they say they are, but they never make the steps. So we had started 2020 without, like, we were kind of frustrated, like, okay, let's project this year in the best way for us to grow. I can't really be focused on getting acquired anymore because it's been some months and we don't want to lose focus on the company. Okay, let's keep doing our stuff. Of course, when we said that, we had a call a few weeks later of one of those companies saying, okay, we really want to move forward right now. Now we have the money, now is the time and everything. We were like, okay, holy shit, this is happening. So we started to negotiate with many agencies. That negotiation process, it started in January 2020, and we started due diligence probably in March, and we got acquired in May. So it was kind of fast. Also, it was in the middle of COVID. So that's also accelerated stuff because we didn't want to lose the opportunity, and we didn't know what was going to happen in the world. So we were like, okay, let's move forward. Let's go faster with it. Let's not stop in small details in the contract. Let's just, and everything. In the end, 2020 was a really, really good year for us. We weren't able to tell, I know beforehand. So it was kind of a fast process. It depends on how you measure it.
And you had to stay on board?
Okay, second question, yes. Sorry. Yes, I had to stay on board, but not too much, I only stayed for a year because, we sold the company to Sir Martin Sorrells. You probably know him, S4 Capital. It's a bet he's doing to build the agency of the future without the mistakes or the errors or just the big structure that was limiting WPP from keeping growing. One of his learning that he always says in different interviews and everything is like, if you buy companies and do large earnout processes of 5 years, you have a problem because you are segmenting your company. You have a lot of different companies inside yours, and this isn't really integrated. It's impossible to integrate because everyone has their own goal. And the agency of the future, the digital agency, has to be wholly integrated in just one brand, and all the teams have to be able to work together and everything. And that translates in that the earnouts shouldn't be really long, because as long as there are earnouts, it's impossible to fully integrate the company and fully be able to provide what clients have and have efficiency and everything. So by that schema, my earnout was, really short.
Interesting. It's very interesting. And then what makes you move? Sorry for asking, are you married?
I am married, yes.
So what makes you and your spouse decide to move from Buenos Aires to Madrid?
It's a tricky question. I've been flying around for the last 10 years. So when I started going out with my spouse, it was 2016, maybe something like that. And we were fully trying to get clients in all Latin America. So I was a lot of time in Colombia, Mexico, of course, San Francisco, because we will always have events, Chile, Peru, everything. So, and when I got together with her, she got a position, an opportunity to move to London. So I was suddenly moving back and forth between Buenos Aires, all our clients, and London 3 or 4 months a year. So I never really lived in Buenos Aires for the last years. And then when the pandemic started, we moved to New York City. So, 2 months before the pandemic started, we decided to move to New York City. I wasn't able to really live in the city a lot because we moved in the pandemic to Buenos Aires. But then I lived in New York City for 6 months last year when the pandemic ended. And when you are from Buenos Aires, maybe, when you're from somewhere else, I think if you really like cities, 2 obvious places to get to know, to live in are London and New York City. But when you're also from Latin America, Spain is an amazing place to be because you are in Europe, you have a lot of advantages, but at the same time, you don't have the cultural differences. You can really integrate in the culture because they speak Spanish. They love the Argentina accent. I don't know why. And we wanted to get that opportunity, to also be able to live in Spain. After after we are there for a few years, we are finally going back to Buenos Aires and really just staying as sedentary. I'm looking forward to stop being a nomad. It's been too long.
It's interesting that you're saying that because I'm starting to go nomad. So this year I've been traveling for 140 days, I think, so far. And this year, 2023, in February, I'm leaving for about 6 months and going full digital. 4 continents. I'm going to promote my upcoming book. And it's interesting to meet you when you're talking about the end after 10 years of your travels. Yeah, and I'm just starting. How would you summarize 10 years of living on a suitcase?
And have you been a sedentary like last years? Are you just starting to travel everywhere?
I've been traveling quite a lot for workshops and talks and EO, but this will be the first time that I'm actually giving my apartment. Like I'm packing a backpack and a suitcase, and there's a whole schedules of talks and workshops around the world.
And are you married?
I know where I'm going to be until like July. So,
are you married or do you have a partner? Or
no, I'm single, so life is easy here.
Yeah, you will probably get a lot of fun going around. I really like my. I wasn't really a nomad last year. So I was more like a sedentary with a lot of bases, because I stayed like 4 months in Colombia, 4 months in Buenos Aires, 3 months in London, and of course the other months was crazy. The most intense year was 2019, in which I took 70 flights. That means a flight every 5 days. It was probably too much. I love flying, and it's good because you get to know a lot of cultures. You get to start having friends in different places. Well, if you are 100% nomad and you go everywhere, you are always starting to build a community and a routine and then leaving it. So, but by the time you go to the same country 5 times a year, you start getting local friends and being part of a group. And I think that's really fun. Also, it really changed in my routine, like which kind of sports or exercise I could do, because those had to be things that I could do everywhere. So I had an expert doing a gym routine, and every time I went to a different country, I did the same gym routine. But I couldn't really dedicate, I don't know, to football, because you have to have a group and everything. It's really hard to coordinate everything like that. I didn't like football, but that was an example. So it really conditioned some stuff, but even so, I was able to have a pretty solid routine of always eating the same and always doing the same routine of exercise, because gyms are standard everywhere. Also, a tip, if you are trying to do something like that and stay in shape, is that in most countries, a gym have kind of a free day or a free week or something, so for you to test. If you're a nomad, you can always go for free to some gym. And also, I don't know, different cultures. I had optimized a lot my carry-on, like to be able to have the essentials and to define what an essential is. So every time I went somewhere, I didn't feel like I was missing stuff. I think as I grew older, I started having more hobbies, and mostly in the pandemic, since I stayed in Buenos Aires for 2 years, I started accumulating stuff, And it was like, okay, maybe our parents didn't accumulate stuff because they were culturally fundamentally different. It was just because they were more sedentary. We are not that different, And it's like, okay, now I like my stuff. I know it's hard to be a nomad.
So I'm making a list of all the things you can pack in a carry-on and trying to figure it out. And then I'm going to travel for 2 months or 3 months without going back. So you need a different suitcase and you need to think about stuff. And
but you also need a really compact combo for you to do podcast everywhere, right? You need, I'm guessing the Yeti microphone.
I'm traveling with a Canon. I bought neck mics. I bought dual neck mics so we can record. I have small DJIs so we can record on the fly with 3 cameras. And I'm kind of trying to figure it out. This morning I was looking at a Kickstarter campaign that has a small bag that expands and you can put your camera and your drones. And I'm learning, I know it's complicated suddenly to vlog and interview and travel and do workshops. It feels too much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for me the hardest part was to have when I had to do a presentation, because I did a lot of presentations for Google and in Google events and everything. My shirt, always kind of without. I don't know how to say it in English, because I never use that word, when you straighten with the... when you iron it. I never had that problem here, and there I was always like looking messy. That was something I wasn't able to solve. I started using t-shirts just for events, and I didn't care about everybody looking formal, and I don't know. But
that's
having
part
to
of the good thing about the tech
stuff, I don't know. I
tech industries that people don't have.
To get there?
Yeah, so I'm saying the good thing about tech industry is that most people walk around with a t-shirt with their brand on it, with a company, so it solves that problem.
I know. A lot of our clients were like banks, so I had to be kind of formal. And there were some conversations, that they will always remember. Once I went to a meeting with one of the largest economic groups in Peru, and they always tell this meeting about, we had 3 pitches of 3 different companies. Everything was formal. Everybody was really prepared. And then Alan came in, like looking really bad. Like he came from the airport and he didn't sleep a lot, and we scared everything. Everything was messy. He didn't really have a presentation. He just spoke about stuff. But we ended up hiring him because of this and that and the knowledge and the company and everything. But it's not that informal, like in large companies. Maybe even in Google, people are really like trying to go and look like really good. And there are a lot of YouTube video of my webinars, and I didn't really look good. I was like, I don't care about how I look. I don't know if it was always a good decision, but for being a nomad, it's a good philosophy because it's practical. It's easier to follow.
I've met some digital nomads who buy what they need when they travel. So they might buy for example, they might buy a button-up shirt for a specific meeting, and they'll carry it with them. And if they don't have any room, they'll drop it. And if they need in 2 weeks, they'll buy another one. And I think today there's so many different solutions, right? You can go and buy in a cheap shop. They send it back to Amazon when they leave. Yeah. No, there's different options and different things you can do. It's interesting. If you could go back living in some place that isn't Buenos Aires, where would you go from all the places you've been to?
Well, of course, I love Madrid, where I'm at right now. I probably will go back to New York City because I was only there for 6 months, and it's an infinite city. It's too expensive, really. Even if you have the money, it's like, I can't believe I'm paying this much for this. It's like, but even so, I think it's one of the best places in the world, right? You can never get bored. I know my answer isn't original, but I always, every time I go there, I always smile, like, I don't know why. Probably because we've been conditioned by Disney when we were young and by Hollywood.
I tend to agree with you. I think this year I've been to New York twice, and it's kind of been with meetings and talks and stuff. And I had the chance to meet friends and kind of like spend some time. And you're like, I don't think it was enough. And then I meet people who've been living there and they love it. But have you ever been to Israel?
Yes, I've been because there's a project. I don't know if you know it, that is called Birthright, Israel, Argentina. Well, it's a global project. I went with the Argentina chapter, so it gets financed by, I don't really understand how Israel finances it. So you go to Israel and you get to know everything about the culture in 10 days. I don't come from a really religious or culturally Jew family, but I have some ancestors. So I did go into the trip, and it was really interesting. And Tel Aviv is also an amazing place to live. The food, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing that people come here and the first thing they'll talk about is the food in terms of level. By the way, Birthright is a very interesting concept for those who don't know. It's where organizations, together with the government of Israel, bring in people from Jewish ancestry to come of experience what is the Jewish state and see the places and everything. Some will end up moving, which is part of the concept, but the others become kind of like brand ambassadors because suddenly they've seen the country, they've experienced, as you said, the food. You've got the chance to see Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and other places, Dead Sea and others. And I think it's a great way to just keep a connection. I think that's mainly what it is.
Yeah, it's a really good, I really liked it. I wasn't really a fan of Israel politics before going. But it is, as you say, like if you are really into the culture and you go to Birthright, you may end up moving there. If you don't know that much, but you are kind of in the middle of some culture like that somewhere else, you may end up really liking it. If you don't know anything, you will end up knowing a little bit more. It's kind of a funnel, right? And if you don't like it, you may end up just at least understanding it's more complicated than it seems. So it provides a really good overview, and it's also a free trip, and it's an amazing country. Maybe if you've never been there, you think like, oh, Israel, wars, and I'm going to go into the desert and everything, and you end up there and it's like, oh no, this city is amazing. Oh, this has so much culture and so much stuff to do, and also a lot of very interesting companies, of course.
Yeah, some of the things you might not see on the news accompanied with great food. So what are you working on now?
So when I left my position, I said I wanted to get into sustainability, to help tackle the climate crisis we are in. I started getting to a lot of stuff. I was offered the global position of sustainability head in the agency I was in. I said yes. That was, of course, a mistake because I've never been an employee before, and I only lasted in that position for a month. And I said, okay, no, I'm not the person for this. I'm sorry. Of course, the company wasn't 100% happy with my decision to suddenly leave the position I was just assigned to, but I thought it was the best option for me. I piloted a few sustainability companies with a few co-founders, but I don't know if you try to build a second company after you build a successful one, and it's like you're gonna be more picky. It's having your second girlfriend. You're gonna be more okay. No, I'm maybe you see something you don't like or something that is not perfect, and it's like, okay, no, maybe I'm going to look for a different co-founder. Maybe I'm going to look for a different idea. So for me, it's harder to really understand what the next thing is. And also there's more risk in one side, because if you try to raise money when you sold the company, a lot of people will happily give you money. But if you never raise money, and if you're trying to convince something, if somebody gives you money, you look at it as kind of a validation, like, okay, I'm going on the right path. This is the right idea. But if I have a crazy idea right now, somebody will give me money because they will think, since I sold the company, I know. So they will give me money no matter what my idea is. So it's more like, okay, I have to think more before asking for something, because it's like, I may be on the wrong path and raise money even so. So I know it's more like a work that you have to do on yourself. So I invested a little bit of money in a few companies that I wasn't convinced to join in, but I think they are going to do really, really well because of their team and everything. I got into a few funds, like venture capital funds, just to understand more about this world and to be in that. And right now, I decided I was going to take kind of a sabbatical because I'm still young and I don't have to get in a rush, and everything wasn't perfect. And something interesting will come in. So I'm playing a lot of paddle. I don't know if you know that sport.
Of puzzles?
Paddle is kind of tennis, but with walls. It's not squash. It's
paddle.
Kind of paddle. Yes, it's a
It's
very
now
popular
big.
sport in Argentina and Spain, but it's growing a lot in Europe and in Denmark, in Sweden, in France, in Italy, and everything. So I'm playing a lot. I'm training every day, like professionally. I'm not a professional, but I'm playing like 3-4 hours a day. Everybody's like, you're crazy, I hate your life, go do something. I'm having a lot of fun with that. And at the same time, I'm looking at opportunities in the paddle world. So right now I'm focused on sustainability and paddle, but I'm not really working a lot, and it's a World Cup, and today Argentina is playing. So if you're Argentinian, all the world stops and nobody works during the World Cup. So I'm kind of in that mood right now. I think it's good to take a rest. I've seen a lot of people who sold their company out were like, okay, I'm going to rest right now. I'm going to enjoy life before getting to something else. And 1 month after that, suddenly they're working again and they're in a new project and they raise a lot of money and they're in that crazy. Well, I think it's good to, take a rest and enjoy not doing something productive for a little bit. And it's really hard to do that because it's tempting to just get on board and keep on what we're doing automatically,
I agree. I think I'm exactly the opposite. I will find something to do. So the company was going well. Let's write a book. The book is almost done. Let's build another company. I love doing stuff. So I completely understand. I can share with you that one of my goals now is to have more free time in general, to focus more on reading and writing, less on meetings. And I'm trying to get that slowly into my routine. And hopefully when I'm traveling, I can do it the right way. So I want to have a podcast, I want to have a workshop that I teach, but not have 15 minutes and 15 meetings a day of like 30 minutes each and kill myself. You know what I mean? I think I've done that already.
Well, now that you mention it, when I started on the digital marketing world, if I can share it like as my 5% reflection in the EO language, I started building my personal brand. I used to have a blog. I used to have thousands of, I think I have 30,000 Twitter followers. I used to build everything around myself, like, okay, hire Alan. Alan is the best in digital marketing. I did a lot of blog posts and participating in stuff and everything. And at one point, what I saw was like, if I don't want to work in this, if I want to delegate everything at one point, if I build everything around me, all the clients are going to want to talk to me, not to somebody else. So at one point I closed my blog. I stopped posting digital marketing stuff on Twitter and started building the brand of the agency. Like, it's maybe it's a hit for my ego, at least at first, because nobody knows really who I am and everything. They started to know the brand, but it was good because I was able to delegate sales and to delegate everything, and everybody wants to hire the brand and not the person. I'm kind of missing really having some attention on myself, and I'm kind of thinking about maybe going to a radio show, having a column, or maybe doing a podcast as you're doing right now. I think it's kind of being able to find a balance, because you don't want to have as much demand. And what you see is a lot of people who have a lot of money but don't feel as free as some freelancers do. There's some people who doesn't earn a lot of money, have some savings, and they're like, fuck it, I'm going to travel the world for a year. And then you see a lot of people who with a lot more money saying, oh, I can't do that, I'm too busy. And it's like, why do you have so much money? Why do you have that company if you can't really enjoy life? I know.
I completely agree. And I think, by the way, starting today, a Twitter account is much more difficult than it used to be. But on the other side, starting a podcast is very simple. And I think most people, you started twice. By the way, you start twice a week talking about paddle and interviewing people, and you'd be surprised how much potential these things have. But I think it's a nice hobby of meeting people, discussing and learning. What is surprising to me that when you promote your social media as a brand and you talk about digital marketing, for example, SEO, you always tell them something, right? You have to teach them something. Well, most of it has been heard 100 times before. The tweets kind of look similar. The threads look similar. But when you interview someone, I think I keep learning things, or I hear reflections that I can also use. You know what I mean? So I find this, for me, very beneficial on a personal level.
Yeah, so as long as you love what you're doing and you're having fun, I think it's a great idea. And also, I always thought a lot of time, and I also piloted a podcast, so I get what you say. Even if nobody watches this, you're going to learn a lot and everything. So I really like the idea. I was also going to ask you, since you are generating a lot of content, if you were able to test and to try GPT-3, OpenAI, and because it's amazing. I've been researching it for the last month. It's crazy how much time it will save you.
What are you using?
GPT-3. It's called OpenAI. It's a company that it's a foundation that gets financed by Elon Musk and a lot of more people. And you can just ask the thing to generate stuff. Well, the most famous one is for this to automatically generate images, but it also works for content. And it's crazy good. You can just tell it. The other day I had to do a talk about digital data for a university, and I just said, okay, build an introduction about a talk about digital analytics for the University of San Andres, and also please end the introduction with a joke about the World Cup, And everything was like, it was perfect. I just read that, and it said, of course, it was generated by AI, and it was a magic moment and everything. Everybody was like, what? Because I know, maybe you can tell it, okay, build a resume, build a blog post about what I talked with Alan. These are the main, the 3 or 4 takeaways, and do this in an informal way. And it will just do like, and it costs you
Yeah,
0.0003 cents, and it's going to be perfect.
it's interesting. We started now, so my new website for my books and stuff is up, and we're now using DALI for the images, and we wanted to have sketches.
Okay, you
So
can
my
really try,
designer said,
if you are building a specific chapter about some, I know, SEO, or I know, what's your book about?
the book is called Fuck the Slides. It's about how to create compelling stories. And we're using the DALI for the sketches for my website, and it's been insane. Like my designer said, take this headshot, put it on a plane in the clouds, and this is the image we're using now for my tour dates.
Well,
And
you
now
can
he's
surely
enjoying himself so
tell.
much that we're going to do the whole.
Yeah, you can surely tell OpenAI to like build a chapter about how to build a compelling story in digital marketing, and it will be scarily similar as to what you had in mind. You know, maybe you can build whole
Did you
episodes.
see the website? There's
No,
a website you can talk now to certain people, like have a chat bot that
ChatGPT.
represents Aristo.
It's the same, but you have the API, so you
That's
can
it.
ask it. Yeah, with the API you can customize it a little bit more, but it's the same. And the other day I saw like, because it's so precise. Yesterday somebody asked the thing to build an instruction booklet about how to get a peanut butter sandwich out of a VHS machine and do it in a tone like it sounds like the Bible, and the results,
And it does it.
it's perfect. It's perfect. It's like, so the Lord say, you shall not try a knife or something like that. And it's like, it's so good. I
Yeah,
asked
yeah.
him a few
So
times to build a fairy tale. I also asked him to write a poem about climate change that rhymes, and it's like, we are too predictable as humans.
mind blowing. A few years ago, a startup came to my agency. They wanted us to do some marketing for them, and they were able to create content based on news. They started with sports, for example, and they could take the news, I don't know, an NBA game. I'm talking 4 or 5 years ago. They could take an NBA game and you tell them how to create the news. So write it from the winning team's point of view, a fan's point of view, and so on. And I remember my content writer, we called him to the room and I said, you should see this. And he looks at it and he says, I need to find a different job. And it was mind-blowing to see. And that was 2000, I think, 18, 17, something like that. We'll put this in the comments, by the way, because I think people should look at it, and I think it'll be interesting. By the way, if you start a podcast that does 15 or 20 minutes once or twice a week about these types of things and the ability, I think it'll be mind-blowing, and people might really enjoy it. There's so many things happening in that area that people just don't know about, right? Like, it's just starting. Before we finish, any final things for young entrepreneurs around Europe listening to this? If you can give them like a tip, a recommendation, something that they should do or know.
I'm probably not going to be original, but I think the best thing about entrepreneurship and the best way for you to be successful is the community, like telling your idea to everybody and trying to ask for favors for people who's been there and it's now where you want to get to. Like, that was amazingly, like, for me, I started in the university in some entrepreneur course and everything. I got to know a lot of people, and everybody will just help you and not steal your idea for free, and get you to connections and everything. And it gets surprisingly easy once you start getting to know enough people. there's one point at which you have to say, okay, I'm going to stop going to events because now I'm all day going to events, and that's not really about entrepreneurship. That's really about, getting social. So there's a balance. But the network I built helped me get to where I'm at. And it was just telling everybody what I wanted to do, and talking to everybody was surprisingly easy at what point. Like, if you are not the social person, and if you try to do it alone because you think you have the perfect idea and everything, it won't work. It will never work, I don't know if your story was similar.
I think in many ways it was similar, but maybe you and I can do in a few months when you become a semi-pro paddle player and you decide which investments are you making in the impact. Let's have another chat in a few months. Let's do another episode in a few months and see what happens. I think it'd be interesting. Maybe we do a live one in Madrid. I'll be probably coming to Madrid to teach. So
of course, I can talk about the specific startups I'm investing in. It's interesting. And you have to come play paddle if you go to Madrid.
So I think we'll do that and we'll arrange. Alan, I want to say a huge thank you for being here. How was it? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me. We can also do something in Israel. I missed that hummus, it's like perfect, and you can get it in Argentina.
Maybe we should do a Mayo hummus. 5 days, every day they eat hummus in a different location in Israel. I think we can sell tickets to a concept like
Everybody
that.
will sign up.
My dear friends, thank you so much for listening. Another episode of EOpreneur is done. If you need anything, let us know. Feel free to write us in the comments. You can find us everywhere. YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, we have a surprise for you. And we're launching a newsletter aimed at tips and tricks that we have collected over the last year from EO members to support you on your journey. So the waiting list is down there, and it will start early 2023. Have fun. See you in the next time. My name is Neil Zaval. It was a pleasure to have you all. Bye-bye.